All right, Rabbi, say good morning, a good tavach. Zechus Baruch Hashem to be able to begin another week of Sanhedrin together. Begin by thanking all of our sponsors. To thank our TALMUD TORAH sponsors for Tafshin Pei 5785, the Tilson Mishpacha, for dedicating all besuros and Jeroshos this year as a zechus for besuros, tovos for Am Yisroel. Our TALMUD TORAH sponsors for the month of Teves, Haba Aleinu L'Tova, the Kelman Family, in memory of Amit Ben David Levy, Zichron Lebracha, brother of Itay Levy, who was killed fighting in Gaza on the first night of Chanukah. We hope that in the merit of our TALMUD TORAH, his neshama will have an aliyah, and his family in Nechama. And of course, we say Hodu Hashem Ki Tov Ki Liolam Chasto for the return of 4 of our hostages. You know, as I mentioned last week, irrespective of what one feels about the particular deal, whether it's a good idea, not a good idea, leaving everything aside, the fact that Baruch Hashem, four precious neshamas are back home with their families, and we hope that Emirat Hashem, our hostages will continue to come home. Our hostages will continue to be reunited with their mishpachos, with their family, with their people, with their land. Which should be Zocha Emirat Hashem, to see all of them come home. Our holy soldiers should be successful, and indeed should be a lifetime of besuros tovos for Am Yisroel. Well, so with that, so let us begin. So we are picking up the new parak today, Emirat Hashem, on Daf Mem. Great daf yesterday, incredible daf yesterday. So let's pick up with the new parak. How you boltkin osan b'sheva chakiros. So remember again, we've spoken about this before in the past a little bit, about the drishas v'chakiros, the idea of the questions that we ask to the Eidim when they come to go ahead and give testimony. So the Mishnah now says that we check the witnesses, which is 7 chakiros, right? 7 different types of questioning. So the Gemara says, what are the examples for chakiros? Be'eza shavua, be'eza shana, be'eza chodesh. So for example, here are some examples. Now these aren't examples, these are actually specific questions that are asked. So again, for example, Be'eza Shana. Let's say first. Be'eza Shavua. So Rashi points out there, Be'eza Shavua Shal Yovel. Right? Remember again, there are 7 Shemitah cycles within a Yovel cycle, right? 50 years to Yovel. So 7 Shemitah cycles. So we asked the witness, what stage of the Yovel cycle did you see this murder? These are talking about capital cases. Did you see this particular murder occur? So Be'eza Shavua, Be'eza Shana, what year? Be'eza Chodesh, what month? Be'kama b'chodesh, what day of the month was it? Be'eza Yom, what day of the week? Be'eza Shah, what time? Be'eza Makom, what place? So we'll say some very specific questions, because remember again, this is dafka for capital cases, so we need to be able to ascertain with absolute certainty that the witnesses are telling the truth. Rabbi Yossi says, Be'eza Yom, Be'eza Shah, Be'eza Makom. Rabbi Yossi says, no, there's 3 questions. Question number 1, what day did it occur? Question number 2, what time did it occur? And question number 3, where did it occur? Now, obviously, this is after the witnesses have given their information about everything else. So after they've given their, so we saw Reuven kill Shimon, so and so. Then again, Rabbi Yossi says 3 simple witnesses. Essentially, what day, what time, what place. Makirim Osam. Makirim Atem. So then we ask the witnesses other questions. Makirim Atem, do you know the defendant? Right? His race symbol, did you give him Hasra? Did you warn him? Ha'oved Avodah Zarah. For example, let's say Reuven's accused of worshiping Avodah Zarah. So Esmi Avad, which Avodah Zarah did Reuven go ahead and worship? V'kama Avad, how much did he worship? Ubame Avad, how did he worship? I was supposed to say there are different ways of worshiping Avodah Zarah. You could bow down, you could kiss. In the case of Baal Pa'or, you could defecate, right? One size doesn't fit all, right? There's something for everyone in Avodah Zarah. So the Gemara says, Ubama Avad, Kalamar Be'vidigos Harei Meshubach. So says it's interesting. So what the Mishnah is outlining over here is essentially the basic obligation. But the more bedikos based in could do, the better you are. So in other words, we'll say also a lot of this, probably I would imagine, was also very subjective, right? Basin would hear the testimony, and sometimes, Basin would probably feel the need to probe a little bit more. So the Mishnah essentially says over here, we're kind of giving Basin the general outline. But of course, feel free to go ahead and amplify and add on to this as well. Maiso Badak Ben Zakai Bo'ok. Most of you have actually seen this. We've seen this mentioned a number of different times. One time Ben Azai. So witnesses testified that they saw Reuven kill Shimon underneath the fig tree. So Ben Azai says, "Tell me, what did the stems of the figs look like? So depending on the season, ultimately you're going to be able to see if the figs. Now, I understand also, this is all part of the same motif as well, that halacha l'maisa, we have to go ahead, we try to do whatever we can in order to exonerate. Right? That's always our goal. We always try to exonerate. So as such, even such specific questions like what did the stems of the figs look like would be potentially helpful in the exoneration of the defendant. So remember again, the 7 questions that we outlined over here are what are called chakiros. So now the Gemara says, what's the distinction between chakiros and bedigos? First wide line. Chakiros, echad omer eini yodea, idusam b'teila. So we'll say for the chakiros, which are the questions mentioned in our Mishnah, if someone responds to any of the chakiros and he says, I don't know, right? The witnesses say, I don't know, that is grounds for automatic disqualification, which makes sense, right? If you can't identify which month, what day during the month, which day, what time, where, these are very specific questions. If you can't answer them, the testimony is automatically disqualified. So the Gemara says, good. Bedikos, echad omer eini yodea, va'afilu shnayim omer ein ani yodin, edusin kayemes. But for bedikos, for example, what would be an example of bedikos? So let's say again, we ask the witnesses, what color shirt was Reuven wearing? That would fall into the category of bedikos. So if at the end of the day, the witnesses can't answer that, even if one can't answer it, both can't answer it, that does not disqualify the eidos. Okay? So the Gemara says, Ach echad chakiros ve'echad bedikos, b'zman shemachishin ze'ezeh, edusam b'teila. The one thing is clear, both with bedikos and chakiros, I should say chakiros and bedikos, if halacha l'maisa, the witnesses contradict each other, automatically disqualified. That's the halacha. Echad omer b'shnayim b'chodesh, ve'echad omer b'shlosha b'chodesh, edus and kaimas. Well, it's not some interesting cases. So let's say witness number 1 says, we saw Reuven kill Shimon, and it was the 2nd day of the month. Right? And the second witness says, no, the second witness says it was the 3rd day of the month. What's the halacha? Edus and kayames. They will say, why? What do we attribute the error to? Shezeh yodeh be'iburo shachodesh, ve'zeh ein yodeh be'iburo shachodesh. So we'll say it could be quite simple. Remember again, a month could have 29 or 30 days. It could be that one guy knew that it was a malay, a complete month with 30 days, and one did not. So in other words, what you begin to see is, and they will say, remember again, what day of the month falls under the umbrella of chakiros. So those are the more severe questions. But we see that we accept the fact that there definitely could be some margin of error. But if witness number 1 says, Reuven killed Shimon on the 3rd of the month, and witness number 2 says, no, he killed him on the 5th of the month, then the eidos is batal. Echad omer, because we'll say again, so what you begin to see is with dates, there could be up to a 1-day discrepancy between the eidim. More than 1 day you can't have. Okay, next. Now we're going to go to time discrepancy. Echad omer b'shtei shos, ve'echad omer b'shalosh shos, edus and kaimas. Similarly again, if let's say Reuven said, right, Reuven killed Shimon, or that's the accusation. Witness number 1 says, we saw Reuven kill Shimon at 9 o'clock in the morning. Shimon says second witness says, we saw it at 10 o'clock in the morning. So what's the halacha? Edus and kayemes. Ultimately again, the edus is good. Echad omer b'shalosh, ve'echad omer b'chamisha, edus and b'teila. But again, if someone, that truth is really what they're saying is like this. Witness number 1 says, I saw Reuven kill Shimon in the 3rd hour into the day. Witness number 2 says, I saw Reuven kill Shimon in the 4th hour into the day. That's fine. That works. Now we'll say, what Rashi points out over here is what we allow for is up to a 2-hour discrepancy in time. That we accept. More than 2 hours, we cannot. So just understand, remember, when the Beis Din asks the witnesses, what time did you see this? So they're actually not asking for an 8:15. What they're asking is a general hour of the day. So therefore, again, if there is up to a 2-hour discrepancy, the testimony could combine. More than a 2-hour discrepancy, testimony cannot combine. Rabbi Huda says, Kayames. Rabbi Huda says, no, halacha l'maisa, even in a case where there is a more than 2-hour discrepancy, ultimately, again, you can still accept the testimony. And Rashi says over here, the kuli hai tai inshi. People make mistakes. Even more than 2 hours, people make mistakes. Now here's what's interesting. Echad omer b'chamesh ve'echad omer b'sheva edusan b'tela. Now we'll say, now interestingly enough, even Rabbi Huda would agree that let's say if one witness says Reuven killed Shimon in the 5th hour, and the other witness says Reuven killed Shimon in the 7th hour, that ultimately again is irreconcilable. Why? Because remember again, I will say 5th hour is before noon, 7th hour is afternoon, and the sun is in two fundamentally different positions. So with that already again, that is considered to be an irreconcilable contradiction. Okay, so the Gemara says as follows, right? Good. So that's what we'll say. So all of this is how we go ahead and we cross-examine the witness. So that after we do all of this with the first witness, then we repeat the same process with the second witness. So again, if it turns out now we've done our chakiros and our bedikos with the witnesses. So if it turns out now testimony is checked out, okay, now what do? What's the first thing we do in Beis Din with the capital case? Posche besuros. Remember what posche besuros means? Beis Din tells the defendant, don't worry. Reuven, if you didn't kill Shimon, you have absolutely nothing to worry about. That's the meaning of posche besuros. So listen to this. If one of the witnesses says, I have the ability to go ahead and bring down something in favor of Reuven. Now, just to give you full context over here, the way this worked is the witnesses came into Beis Din, right? What are the witnesses there for? The witnesses are there to say that Reuven killed Shimon. If after the witnesses give testimony, one of the witnesses turns around and he says, oh, you know what? I actually now have something to say in favor of the defendant, right? Oh, echad mina talmidim yesh li lelamed alav chova, or one of the students. Remember again, this refers to the rows of students who would sit in front of the Beis Din. One of the students say, I think I have a way to find Reuven guilty. In either of these two cases, mishaskino, so we don't listen to either of these people. Now, we don't listen to them for two different reasons. Remember, Rabbi said this in the last parak. Once witnesses give testimony, and they're there to go ahead and find Reuven guilty, we don't accept them to now go ahead and say, oh, I have something positive to say in favor of Reuven. Because what does it look like? Looks like they're hedging their bets a little bit, right? So that doesn't look appropriate. Same idea over here. If one of the students comes along and says, oh, I have some information that could be damning for Reuven, we also don't listen to him. Again, if he has the ability to come along and say something positive for Reuven, we'll absolutely accept his testimony. Okay. Amar Echamina Talmidim. Yesh li lamed alav zechus. Here it is. So let's listen to this. If one of the Talmidim says, I have something to exonerate Reuven, right? I have some information that I think could be helpful to Reuven. So what's the halacha? Ma'alin oso umoshivan oso beinehem. So we invite him to sit on the Beis Din. Interesting, right? So one of the students pipes up, I have something good that could be helpful to Reuven. He says, Shkoyach, come on down. Right? We bring him ultimately again to seat him on the Beis Din. So the Gemara says, listen to this. And we keep him there. We keep him there till the end of deliberations. So if it turns out that the guy had something meaningful to say, then we listen to him. And even if, and by the way, even if the defendant, Reuven says, I have something positive to say in my defense, so the Gemara says, we listen to Reuven. We absolutely listen to him. But again, assuming, of course, that what he's saying is meaningful and substantive. Supposed to say, Beis Din finds him innocent. What happens? Patra, he's done. Done, case closed, we're done. Ve'im lav. So we'll say now, what happens if Beis Din can't find grounds to exonerate him? What do we do under those circumstances? Ma'avirin oso l'machar. So we saw this before. We never issue a guilty plea on the day of. Right? We'll always go ahead and wait to give a guilty plea until the day after. Till the next morning. So what do we do what do we do in between? This is incredible. So umizdavgin zugos, and the Beis Din would break up kind of into chavrusas. They would break up into pairs. And they would go out and they would discuss the case. So they would minimize the amount that they were consuming, their food intake. They would not drink wine. I will say, this highlights just the importance of what it is that they are ruling on. This is literally, again, this is life and death. Life and death. As such, there has to be a certain amount of koved rosh, a certain amount of seriousness with which they approach this entire situation. So they don't have to fast, but they do diminish their consumption. They won't drink wine. The Gemara says, "V'nosin kol halayla," and they would go back and forth the entire night. The next morning they would wake up early, come to Beis Din. So the ones who found Ruvain innocent, they said, okay, that's our position, and we stand firm in our position that Ruvain is innocent. But the one who found Ruvain guilty, but the ones who felt that Reuven was guilty, they also had the right to say, we still find Reuven guilty and we stand in place. They both say, now anyone who originally wanted to find Reuven guilty, but then wants to switch teams, you could switch teams to exonerate. However, but ultimately, again, once a Dayan expresses that he wants to find Ruvain innocent, he doesn't have the right to turn around and then find Ruvain guilty. Incredible. The Gemara says, fine. I'll just mention how incredible this is. Just two tremendous ideas. First of all, the idea, what do you see from here? Just on a general sense, we can't deliver guilty capital verdicts there. You have to sleep on it. Well, say a tremendous Moshe Haskell that sometimes before we pass judgment on someone or something, sleep on it. Sleep on it. It's easy to go ahead and rush to snap judgment, quick judgment. But sometimes we're wrong. Often we're wrong. And if you just take a little bit more time to be deliberate before you pass judgment on another person, sleep on it. Sleep on it. Sometimes you end up averting tremendous and terrible mistakes. Other piece is also sometimes once you go ahead, it's good to give yourself time also in the formulation of opinions. Because sometimes in life, once we become rooted in an opinion, it's very difficult to back out of it. So sometimes it's good to go and give myself a little bit of time to formulate those opinions. Now here, you see that once the Dayan says innocent, that's it, no backsies, right? You can't get out of it. Now again, that's good over here because the goal is to exonerate. But sometimes we back ourselves into certain opinionated corners, and we've dug ourselves in there and we can't get out. Take a little bit more time to deliberate, a little bit more time to concretize our ideas, our hashkafas, our thoughts, our approaches, our opinions, and they come out so much better. The Gemara goes right there. So, Tov b'davar, good. Tov b'davar, shnei sofer nader maskirin also. Now, let's say you have a judge who yesterday again said, he found Ruvain guilty. Today he's saying innocent or opposite. So don't worry about it because remember there are stenographers. We spoke about this before. Remember again, 3 stenographers, right? 1 to go ahead and record the opinions of the judges who exonerate. 1 to record the opinions of the judges who find guilty. And 1 to go ahead and record all of the opinions of all of the judges together. So Lamaisa, again, there are all of these stenographers. So the Gemara says, if one of the Dayanim makes a mistake, the stenographer will be there to remind him about his opinion. So the Gemara says, so we'll say, so once again, if we find the ability to exonerate, we exonerate and let Ruvain move on his way. Ve'im lav, and if not, omdim leminyan. So we count. So if 12 find innocent and 11, because remember there's a basin of 23 right now, right? 12 find innocent and 11 find guilty, it's innocent. All you need to remember again for innocence is what? Simple majority. Simple majority. Majority of 1. However, what if 12 find guilty and 11 find innocent? So now I have a majority of 1 for a guilty verdict. And remember again, you need at least a majority of 2. Or even if there are 11 who exonerate and 11 who find guilty, right? And 1 says, I don't know. But remember again, we saw this before. What happens when a judge says, I don't know? What does I don't know? I don't know means you don't exist. I don't know means that you don't exist, at least in the Basin context, right? So we get him out of there. Va'afilu esrim u'shnayim mizakin o mechayvin, and even about say if you have 22 judges who either find guilty or exonerate, ve'echad omer eini yodea, and one judge says, I don't know, Yosifu hadayanis. So we'll say, so remember again, we're reiterating the klal over here, that when you have a judge who says, I don't know, it's as if he's not there. So this is actually an interesting case. So let's say, we'll say, for example, you have a situation of 22 judges who say, Reuven is innocent, or 22 judges who say, Reuven is guilty, and one judge says, I don't know. So again, essentially what happens, it's as if he doesn't exist, which means you only have a basin of 22. You can't adjudicate capital cases with a basin of 22. So it essentially disqualifies the process. So what do? What do you do? The Gemara says, "V'kama mosifin." How much do you add? So you have to add on judges. How many additional judges do you have to add on? V'kama mosifin. Shnayim ad shiva v'echad. Remember again, we add on judges. Remember, we take them from the bench. We saw this. We take them from the bench, 2 at a time. Ad shivim ve'echad, until we get ultimately again to a total of 71. A total of 71. So the Gemara says, so ad shivim ve'echad, shloshim v'shishim mezakin, u'shloshim v'chamishim mechayvin. So if you have 36 who go ahead and find him innocent, and 35 who find him guilty, Zakai ultimately again, he's going to go ahead and be guilty. Shloshim v'shishim mechayvin u'shloshim v'chamishim mezakin. But if you go ahead and you find 36 that find him guilty and 35 that find him innocent, done in elu kineged elu. So let's remember again. Here's the issue. Once you get to 71, right? Once you get to 71, so that's it. Like we tapped out. So then. Remember, one of two things has to happen. Either you need to get to a majority of 2 in order to convict, or you need to get to a majority of 1 in order to exonerate. But at that point, interestingly enough, the group has to work it out, right? So in other words, from 23 to 71, you could keep adding on judges until we figure out what the final verdict is. Once we get to 71, that's the end. That's the end. And halacha l'maisa again, they have to figure it out until they get to a verdict. Incredible. All right, so let's analyze. So ask the Gemara, where do you know this? So now what do you know what? So remember again, the Mishnah said that there are 7 chakiros. 7 chakiros. The Gemara says, how do you know that there are 7 chakiros? The Gemara actually seems to be looking like for a scriptural allusion to this. So the Gemara says, Damakra, because the pasuk says, V'darashta v'chakarta v'sha'alta hetev. Right? Va'omer, v'ugad lecha, v'shamata, v'darashta hetev, va'amar, v'darshu hashoftim hetev. So as I say, interestingly enough, so what the Gemara is doing is like this. Every time the Torah uses the lashon of darashta, chakarta, and hetev, that refers to chakiros, trishas v'chakiros. So again, you have v'darashta, v'chakarta, hetev, v'darashta, hetev, and v'darshu, hetev. That gives you 7. That gives you 7. Says the Gemara Basa. Now we're going to see in just a moment that this is actually three different contexts. One is talking about Iranidachos, a city which worshipped idolatry. Second is talking about an individual who worships idolatry. And the third is talking about Eidim Zomimim. Okay, but we put them all together because they all utilize similar Lashonos, ultimately of investigation. And that gives us 7 expressions here. Give us our biblical source for 7 chakiros. Amit Beis. I ve'ema chada kidich siva. Maybe not. Maybe what it means, we'll say, how do you know to go ahead and combine all of these into one discussion? Maybe at the end of the day, what it actually means is what? Maybe each section has its own drishas v'chakiros, and each section has its own amount of drishas v'chakiros corresponding to the time that Rashi v'chakarta is written in that context. To which the Gemara says, De'im kain lichtavinu rachmana b'chada. Because if not, if the intention over here was to go ahead and group everything together, then why not write everything in just one context? To which the Gemara says, Kevan tekulu bahadi hadadi ksiva mehadadi yalfi. Because they are all written close to each other, therefore Allah so they can be learned now from one another. The Kevan the yalfi mehadadi, since they can be learned now from one another, also because they have similar expressions. Keman dichsev bechada dami. It's as if they were all written in one single context. I v'halo dami al hadadi But I will say again, these three things, as we're going to see in just a moment, are not similar to each other. They're not comparable. For example, Ir hanidachas lahanach tarti lo dami. For example, Ir hanidachas, now remember again, Ir hanidachas is a city where the inhabitants worshipped idolatry. Everything is wiped out. So Ir hanidachas is not comparable. Why? Look, the Gemara says, Shekin mamonan palat. Because remember, by Ir hanidachas, everything is destroyed. People are wiped out, possessions are wiped out, everything is destroyed. So that's different. By a person, an individual worships Avodah Zarah, he may be executed, but his property is not destroyed. Edim Zomamin, they get the reciprocal punishment, whatever that may be. Avodah Zarah, lahanach tarti lo dami. Similarly, again, Avodah Zarah is also not, and this is an individual worships Avodah Zarah, is not comparable to the other two cases. Why? Shekem b'sayif, because Avodah Zarah is punishable by sayif. The heading Edim Zomin lahanach tarti lo damya. Edim Zomin is not comparable to Ir hanidachas or Avodah Zarah. Why? Shekin tzrichim hasra, because it requires a warning. So the Gemara says behetiv yafinon me'adadi ugzer shava mufna. The Gemara says you're right. It's gzer shava of hetiv, right? And ultimately, again, this is gzer shava mufna. But remember again, what does gzer shava mufna mean? Mufna means that the word itself is open because it's not used for any other limud. So the Gemara says the iva mufna ikal mifrach, because if the gzer shava was not mufna, if it wasn't open, you could ask the following question: ikal mifrach, there could be a pircha. We'll see the pircha in just a moment. The Gemara says you're right. Loi, if nuye mufne, the gzer shava is open. These words are not used for anything else. And therefore, halacha l'maisa, again, they are in fact fit for the drasha. Since the pasuk could have said that just v'darshu v'chakra, and that would have given you drishus v'chakirus, v'shani krabbi dibur behetiv, and the Torah goes out of its way to use lashon of hetiv. It says, right, darashta v'chakarta hetiv, thoroughly. You don't need that word hetiv. I don't need that. So therefore, again, shmamina lafnuye, that comes to show you ultimately, again, that the Torah is freeing up the other words for use for the gzera shava. But again, I will say that only tells me that the word is free on one side of the scriptural equation. When it comes ultimately again to Edim Zomin Avodah Zarah, mufnuhu mishum dahavadei lemichtav, because ultimately again, because it could have just said sha'alta v'chakarta ela irani dachas my havadei lemichtav, but by irani dachas, what else should it have written? Hak siva kulu. Hasam nami if nuye mufna. It's still open for gzer shava. Why? Darosh tidrosh. O chakar tachkar. The Torah Basa could have used a double expression utilizing the same word. Darosh tidrosh. Or chakar tachkar. First wide line. V'shani kra b'dibure behetiv. Yet the Torah goes out of its way, changes the verbiage, and uses the word hetiv. Shmamina lafnuye. That extra word is there to free up the rest of the phrase, to be able to make the gzera shava. Okay, therefore I will say, essentially I have this three-way gzera shava between Ir hanidachas, Avodah Zarah, and Edim Zomamin. What that halachic triangle, right, what that triangle gzera shava does is allows me to pull all of those words and recognize that the expressions of darashta, chakarta, and hetiv appear a total of 7 times. And that gives me, again, my biblical source for 7 chakiros. Incredible. Va'asu nechnakin, the Gemara says, Va'asu nechnakin, the kavachar miniskalim, u'minei ragin. And also, ultimately, again, those subject to Chanukah could be learned out from a kavachomer from those subject to skila, u'minei ragin, va'asu nisrafin, the kavachar miniskalim. And ultimately, again, those subject to sreifa could be learned out from a kavachomer from skila, to which the Gemara says, Hani chal rabbanan darmi skila chamura. So, going to rabbanan who say that skila is more chamur, this makes sense. Al Rabbi Shimon Damar Sreifa Chamura Ma'ikal Neymar. But according to Rabbi Shimon, who says that Sreifa is more Chamur, what is there to say? Al Rabbi Yehuda V'hine emes nachon. V'hine emes nachon. To which the Gemara says, Rabbi Yehuda says that the pasuk says V'hine emes nachon hachad sari. So we'll say, here's the issue. Rabbi Yehuda says, if you add in that V'hine emes nachon, that gives me a total of 11. Right? In other words, if we're darshaning every single time you have darashta, chakarta, and now why not add in emes nachon? That gives me 11. To which the Gemara says, sheva l'sheva chakiros. So I'll use 7 of that for the 7 chakiros. Dal tlas l'gzera shava. Go ahead and take out 3 for use of the Gzer Shava. Parshulu Chada. That'll give me 1 left. The Rabbi Shimon Lasui and Nisrafim. According to Rabbi Shimon, it comes to include those or those cases that are subject to Sreifa. The Rabbanon Milsa the Aseh B'Kava Chomer Tarach V'Kasav L'Kra. And according to the Rabbanon, even something sometimes that could be learned from Kava Chomer, Torah goes out of its way to state it in the pasuk itself. Okay, Begate par Rabbi Avo. Rabbi Avo did not like any of this. Rabbi Avo he did not like these drashas. Ema la suye shmona chakiros. So Rabbi Avo says maybe there are 8 chakiros. Right, comes to include 8 chakiros. To which the Gemara says what? Ushmona chakiros mi ika. But that's what the Mishnah said. The Mishnah says, well, 7 chakiros. Where are you getting 8 chakiras from? Alam alo, why not? Why can't there be an 8th chakira? Why would be the 8th chakira? Va'ika la'asuye bekama b'sha'a. So also remember again, here's what's interesting. Rabbi Avo posits, maybe there's an 8th chakira. What's the 8th chakira? What time? Remember again, Mishnah's chakiras, the chakira was what hour? What hour? Right? Maybe Rabbi Avo says, maybe there's an 8th chakira. The 8th chakira is not showing me the hour. What time during that hour? Give me a time. Tell me 8:37. 8:37. Okay, we can have a margin of error. But maybe the 8th chakiras tell me exactly what time. The time of the Brisa supports this as well. How you both can also bishmona chakiros. There's actually a Brisa that says this. The Brisa says that there weren't 7 chakiros like the Mishnah. There are actually 8 chakiros altogether. To which the Gemara says, Hani chala Abaye alibud Rabbi Meir. So this makes sense according to Abaye, right? This makes sense according to Abaye alibud Rabbi Meir. The Amar ein adam toah v'lo klum. I will say these next few lines are absolutely fascinating. So according to Rabbi Meir says a person has the ability to be absolutely precise. Absolutely precise. And therefore, again, because a person has the ability to be absolutely precise, therefore what? There's nothing wrong with adding in that 8th chakira. What's the 8th chakira? What time? Not what hour, what time. And because a person has the ability for complete precision, therefore it should be able to answer that question appropriately. So listen to this. So we'll say, and the truth is, even if you hold that a person isn't exactly precise, okay, they can still get it in the ballpark. So in other words, if one witness says, we saw Reuven kill Shimon at 8:40, another one says, I was 9 o'clock, okay, that's fine. That's fine. In other words, even if we're willing to accept some level of imprecision, that's fine. So we'll say, but according to Abaye's Rabbi Yehuda, that a person can make a mistake up to a half hour. Right, up to a half hour. People could go ahead, people can make a mistake for a long, people can make dramatically, as opposed to that, I just point out over here, just fascinating. It's fascinating to see by people how people treat timeliness. People treat timeliness. Right? To me, it's one of the things that drives me a little bit crazy. Again, it is one of the most important midos a person could possess is timeliness. If you take something, if something is meaningful and important to you, then be on time for it. And if you're not on time for it, just understand the message that you're transmitting says it's not important. It's not important. You can give whatever excuse, like there's an excuse for anything and everything in the world. If you're not on time, whether it's for your job, whether it's for davening, whether it's for, when you're supposed to be home, whatever it is. And it's true, there's never a shortage of excuses. It's an incredible yesod. But if you're not on time, it means that it's not, whatever it is not important enough for me to make a concerted effort to show up on time. And it's a good window into ourselves, because the things that are important to us, we're always on time. We're always on time, right? The things that I really enjoy, I'm on time. But it's interesting. So the Gemara says, people treat time differently. People treat time differently. So it's interesting. So you have Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir says a person has the ability to be exact, right? And then again, you see other opinions that say a person maybe is a little bit late here and there. And then this third category, to in shituva. Who's this third category? This third category of people just can't get it together. Just can't get it together, right? They're all over the place, always late, always this. And I'll say it's interesting. So again, first of all, it's a little bit validating because there are different kinds of people who are wired differently, when it comes to time. But certainly, again, unless a person has some compelling reason why they can't be on time perpetually for things, it's just important for us to do a self-check for ourselves. You can have all the most wonderful reasons in the world, but at the end of the day, if you're not on time for something, the message you're broadcasting about that thing, whether you intend to broadcast it or don't intend to broadcast it, is, this is not important enough for me to be here. Now, again, you may be saying, other things are more important than this, and that's why I'm going to be late to this. Just understand, when there's a lack of timeliness, what a person is communicating is a hierarchy of importance in life. And it's important because sometimes these things happen, we don't realize the messages that we're kind of emoting to other people or giving off to other people. We don't even intend to do it, but Lamaisa, again, I'm still giving it off. But it's just interesting to see this range of people when it comes to timeliness. Okay, in any event, so we're trying to just figure out, according to Rabbi Avo has this eighth chakira. So what is this eighth chakira? So the Gemara says, okay, so it'd be tempting to say, maybe the eighth chakira is what time? Give me an exact time that a person, that the event occurred. That's fine, but not everybody holds that people have the ability or the capability of that level of precision. So what could be the eighth chakira? What year during the Yovel cycle did the murder occur? We already asked that. Hainu be'ezeh shavua. So we spoke about that, right? That's one of the first questions, right? What year in the Shemitah cycle is going on? Elo la'asuye be'ezeh Yovel. No. The question is supposed to remember again, Yovels, right? Yovelos are numbered, right? It's interesting. We'll say how it's all part of the same time motif, right? If you think about it, think about what the Yid counts. We count hours, right? We count minutes, right? The Gaza has a true appreciation from this, right? What's the molad? I don't know, whatever, right? So whatever, 4 minutes and 2 chalakim, after this. So we count, right? We count minutes, we count hours, we count days, we count weeks, we count months, we count years. We count years in a Shemitah cycle. We count Shemitah cycles in a Yovel, and we count Yovlos as well. We count every single unit of time. Because Rabbi say, what's interesting is it's this same lesson that keeps appearing over and over and over again. Time is the greatest resource, and therefore time management is the most important tool. That's why, again, going back to Friday's daf, we saw the accounting of Adam Arishon's day. Every hour was accounted for. Granted, not every hour was great, but every single hour was accounted for. The key to success in life is absolute, complete time management. Again, are we going to get down to the chalakim? Maybe if I knew what a chilek was, I'd be able to manage it a little bit better, right? I don't know what the chalakim are, right? But okay, so maybe I'm not managing the minute to minute. That's probably, halavai, we should get to that level. But at least to manage the hours of life. Not to let the hours slip through our fingers into oblivion is the key to personalistic success. So maybe, again, the Gemara is suggesting, maybe the eighth chakira is what number Yovel are we up to? Hey, what number Yovel are we up to? Vidach. The other opinion says, no. We don't need to know the number of Yovel. As long as the witnesses know what number year in the Shemitah cycle it is, that's more than enough. Shabbos say, so therefore, interestingly enough, so what's the takeaway from this? Here's the takeaway. Takeaway is, the Mishnah told us we have 7 chakiros, right? And what the Gemara taught us is, interestingly enough, the makar, the source for those chakiros, not the chakiros themselves, but the source for the concept of 7 probing questions to ensure that the witnesses really saw what they saw, or at least were present to be able to see what they saw. That concept of 7 chakiros comes from the Torah. Where does it come? It comes from the conglomeration of Iranidachos, individual worships of Avodah Zarah, and Eidim Zomamin. Out of those 3 contexts, we have Darashta Chakarta Heitiv, Darashta Heitiv, Darshu Heitiv. There is an opinion that says that there's an 8th chakira. Halacha Maisa, we reject that opinion. We go with the 7 chakiras as espoused in our Mishnah that have their biblical source. Incredible. Let's go weiter. Says the Gemara. Rabbi Yossi says, remember, Rabbi Yossi came along and said that you guys are getting too complicated. Rabbi Yossi says there are only 3 questions. What were the 3 questions? Eze Yom, what day did Reuven kill Shimon? Eze Shah, what time did Reuven kill Shimon? And remember, I will say, whenever you see Shah never means 8:45. What does Shah mean? 8th hour of the day, 9th hour of the day, something like that. And be'eza makom. Be'eza makom. What place? What place? That's Rabbi Yossi's 3 questions. So the Gemara says, good. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Tanya, Amar Rabbi Yossi Chachamim. Listen to this. So Rabbi Yossi said to the Chachamim, according to you, Misha Bava Amar Emesh Hargu. Listen to this. Let's say witnesses show up, right? And witnesses say yesterday, right? So let's say it's Monday, right? Reuven shouldn't kill Shimon on Shabbos. He should wait till Sunday, right? So what happens? Witnesses show up on Monday, and they say yesterday, Reuven killed Shimon. And he says yesterday. Are we going to say, Omer lo, be'ez ha-shavua, be'ez ha-shana, be'ez ha-chodesh, be'kama b'chodesh? So we'll say, here's what's interesting. Rabbi Yossi's logic is like this. You know, if witnesses show up and they say that yesterday, Sunday, Reuven killed Shimon, you're going to start asking now the witnesses all of these questions, right? But which year of the Shemitah year was it, right? Which year, which month, what day of the month? He just told you yesterday. So in other words, what Rabbi Yossi is trying to highlight is that very often all of these chakiras that you Chacham are espousing, they're unnecessary. Guys rolling into Beis and saying, yesterday, Reuven killed Shimon. So the chakiras, so because that Rabbi Yossi says, I'm going to tell you the 3 core questions, and this is all you need. What day? Okay, you answered that yesterday. What time? And where did it happen? All of the other questions could very often just be totally unnecessary. So that's what Rabbi Yossi says. So the Gemara says, good. So the Chacham said back to Rabbi Yossi, according to you, Misha Bava Amar Achshav Hargu. Amar lo be'eza yom, be'eza shah, be'eza makom. So Rabbi Yossi, according to your logic, let's say witnesses show up and they say, literally, we just saw Reuven kill Shimon. We just saw it. So I say to Rabbi Yossi, are you going to ask them what day? You're going to ask them what time? So in other words, we'll say, so the Chacham is saying to Rabbi Yossi, we can ask the same question back on you. Ella, afal gav de lo tzarich, raminon aleik Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. Rather, what the Chacham say to Rabbi Yossi is like this. You're right. It could be that sometimes the questions are unnecessary, but we will ask them anyway. For what purpose? We want to impose the need to share this information in accordance with Rabbi Shimon ben Eliezer. Both remember again, Rabbi Shimon ben Eliezer was the one who said that we try to confuse the witnesses in capital cases in order to get them to contradict themselves, and ultimately in order to get their testimony not to stick. In other words, remember, our goal is we want to exonerate. That's our goal. So therefore, again, the Chacham essentially say we fully recognize that there are times when all of these questions may be unnecessary. But we ask them anyway. We ask them anyway in an effort, first of all, to ensure that the witnesses are really telling the truth. And if it ends up that they trip over themselves with the information, then again, we're happy for that to occur as well. The Gemara says, Rabbi Yossi says, Emesh hargu shchiach berav ejos. Achshav hargu lo shchiach berav ejos. Rabbi Yossi will respond, no. Rabbi Yossi will respond that witnesses coming in and saying that halacha l'maisa, Reuven killed Shimon yesterday, that's a common case. Witnesses coming into Beis and saying we just saw Reuven kill Shimon, that's not common. That's not common, and therefore halacha l'maisa, again, we're not worried that is going to actually occur. All right, I will say, so bottom line, halacha l'maisa, we have this fundamental halachos in the Chachamim. The Chachamim giving these 7 chakiras, which the Chachamim hold really have their source, midaraisa. Rabbi Yossi says 3 basic questions: what day, what time, what place. The Rambam Paskin is like the Chachamim, and therefore halacha l'maisa in capital cases, we employ these 7 questions, the 7 chakiras. Incredible. Right, well, we'll stop over for today. Shkoyach, okay? Meretz Hashem, an incredible week ahead of us. Yeah, shkoyach, everyone. Long happen. All right. Everyone on Zoom, have a great day, everyone. Shkoyach. Simple question. Back in the day, how did they measure minutes? They didn't have watches. So they would have
7 minutes, 5 minutes.
No, I think when it's in Be'ez Shah, it's more like middle of the hour, end of the hour. People still
days I get.
people still do that. They definitely measure hours, that's for sure.
Because we want to be exact. We look at your watch.
Yeah. So I think there was still.